I arrived at my sister Patricia's mansion for our mother's birthday dinner, with my 7-year-old son, Ethan, holding my hand tight. The moment we stepped into the dining room, I felt the chill. Patricia slid a glass of water across the polished mahogany table to Ethan, while her 3 children sat before elaborate lobster platters, butter dripping down their chins. She looked at me with cold eyes and said, "We don't feed extras." Our mother, Linda, added with a dismissive glance, "You should know your place, Joshua." I forced a smile, squeezed Ethan's trembling hand under the table, and replied as calmly as I could manage, "Noted." Then the doorbell rang. The private chef had arrived. The front door opened, and in walked Antoine, a renowned culinary artist whose face I recognized from local food magazines. Patricia had hired him for $1,500 to impress her country club friends who filled the other seats around the table. I watched my son's eyes well up with tears as he took a sip of his water, trying not to look at the feast in front of his cousins. Madison, Patricia's oldest at 10, leaned over and whispered loud enough for everyone to hear, "Why doesn't your dad have money like our dad?" Her brother, Trevor, age 8, laughed and added, "Yeah, you guys are poor." The youngest, 5-year-old Chloe, just stared at Ethan with confusion, not quite understanding the cruelty yet, but sensing the tension. Patricia didn't correct them. Instead, she turned to her guests and announced in a voice dripping with false sympathy, "My brother Joshua never quite made anything of himself. He lives in a tiny apartment after his divorce, 2 bedrooms for him and Ethan. Can you imagine?" She shook her head as if discussing a tragic disease. Linda, our mother, nodded approvingly from the head of the table, her jewelry catching the light from the crystal chandelier above. I always knew Patricia would be the successful one. From the time she was young, she had ambition, drive. She married well. Her eyes flickered to me with something close to disappointment. Some children just have it, and others don't. I remained silent, my jaw tight. They didn't know about the 70-hour weeks I worked as a restaurant manager at Carmichael's downtown. They didn't know about the double shifts I pulled so Ethan could have new shoes when his old ones wore through. They didn't see me helping him with homework at midnight after closing the restaurant, both of us exhausted but pushing through together. Patricia's husband, Derek, a hedge fund manager with slicked-back hair and a watch that cost more than my car, joined in. "The blue-collar lifestyle," he said with a chuckle, cutting into his steak. "I respect it, Joshua. Someone has to do that work, right? Can't all be winners." The guests laughed politely, uncomfortable but too invested in their social standing to object. Antoine moved through the room with his team, serving course after course. Seared scallops, truffle risotto, Wagyu beef. Each plate a work of art. Each plate placed in front of everyone except Ethan. My son stared at his water glass. I saw his lower lip quiver. He was 7 years old, and he understood exactly what was happening. He understood that his own family was telling him he wasn't good enough to eat with them. "Dad," he whispered, tugging my sleeve, "can we go home?" Before I could answer, Patricia's voice cut through. "Oh, don't leave yet, Joshua. We're just getting to the good part." She dabbed her mouth with a linen napkin and smiled. "Mother has an announcement." Linda stood, her posture perfect, her expression pleased. The room quieted. "As you all know, I'm getting older. 73 next month. I've been thinking about my legacy, about what I leave behind." She paused for effect. "I've made a decision about the family beach house." My heart sank. The beach house in Cape May had been in our family for 40 years. Our father bought it before Patricia and I were born. He died 12 years ago, and I'd always assumed Patricia and I would inherit it equally when the time came. The property was worth at least $1.2 million. "I'm transferring full ownership to Patricia," Linda announced, gesturing to my sister with a flourish, effective immediately. Patricia's smile widened. Derek raised his wine glass in celebration. The guests applauded politely. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. "What?" Linda turned to me, her expression hardening. "I'm giving it to the child who deserves it, the one who married well and gave me successful grandchildren." She looked at Ethan with barely concealed disdain. "Some family lines are worth preserving. Others are not. Ethan started crying, tears rolling down his cheeks. He tried to hide his face against my arm. I started to stand, ready to leave and never look back, but Patricia held up her hand. "Wait," she said, her voice saccharine sweet. "Before you go, I need you to sign something." She nodded to Derek, who produced a folder from beneath his chair. Mother had her lawyer draw up papers. "You're officially waiving any claim to the beach house, the family trust, and her estate. She wants this settled now, tonight, with witnesses." She slid the folder across the table to me. My hands shook as I opened it. I stared at the documents, my vision blurring slightly as I tried to process what I was reading. There were multiple pages, dense with legal language, but certain phrases jumped out at me. Waiver of all inheritance rights. Family trust assets totaling approximately $300,000. Complete and irrevocable transfer. $300,000. I didn't even know there was a family trust. Our father had never mentioned it. Or maybe he had, and Linda had hidden it from me all these years. "There's a trust?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Patricia laughed. "Oh, Joshua, you really are clueless. Father set it up 30 years ago. Mother's been managing it. Or rather, her financial advisor has. It's grown quite nicely." A man I hadn't noticed before stepped forward from the corner of the room. He wore an expensive suit and carried a leather briefcase. "I'm Richard Townsend, your mother's attorney," he said, placing a business card on the table beside the documents. "Everything here is legally binding. Your signature, witnessed by the guests present tonight, will constitute full and final settlement of any claims you might have to the family estate." I scanned the documents again. I was signing away Ethan's future, his college education, his security, everything our father might have wanted him to have. My hands trembled as I held the pen. Ethan tugged at my sleeve. "Dad," he whispered, his voice breaking, "I'm really hungry." Patricia heard him. Of course she did. She laughed, a sharp sound that cut through the room. "Maybe he should have been born into a better family," she said, and several guests shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Derek added, his tone condescending, "You really should learn to provide better for your child, Joshua. It's a father's responsibility." I felt heat rising in my face. Humiliation coursed through me. A room full of strangers was watching my family destroy me, watching my son cry from hunger while they feasted on lobster and steak. They were witnesses to my degradation, and that's exactly why Patricia had invited them. I picked up the pen. My jaw clenched so hard my teeth ached. Every instinct screamed at me to walk out, to refuse, to fight. But what could I do? I had no lawyer, no resources to fight Patricia and Derek's money. Linda had made her choice, and in this moment, I felt more alone than I had since my divorce 3 years ago. I signed my name on every line that required it. My handwriting looked strange, disconnected, as if someone else was controlling my hand. When I finished, I slid the folder back across the table to Richard Townsend. He gathered the papers efficiently, produced his phone, and began scanning them with an app. "What are you doing?" I asked. "Filing them electronically with the county clerk's office," he said without looking up. "They'll be officially recorded within the hour. Everything legally processed." Patricia beamed. "Efficient, isn't he? Cost me a fortune, but worth every penny." I stood slowly, pulling Ethan up with me. My son's face was red and blotchy from crying. I needed to get him out of here, to take him somewhere safe, to feed him and hold him, and tell him that none of this was his fault. But then I paused. I looked at Patricia's triumphant expression, at Derek's smug smile, at Linda's cold satisfaction. Something shifted inside me. A strange calm settled over my chest. "I'm glad we're doing this properly," I said, my voice steady now, with witnesses and a lawyer present. Patricia's smile faltered slightly. She couldn't read my tone. "Since we're making things official tonight," I continued, "there's something I should mention. The beach house? It has significant structural damage." The room went silent. "Black mold throughout the walls," I said, watching Patricia's face. "Foundation cracks in 3 places, and the septic system failed last month. Complete backup." I know because I'm the one who's been managing the property for the past 2 years. Mother gave me the keys and asked me to handle maintenance. Linda's expression shifted from satisfaction to confusion to something resembling fear. I have all the inspection reports, I continued. Contractor estimates, photos, detailed documentation. The repair cost is around $400,000. I looked directly at Patricia. Congratulations on your inheritance, sister. Patricia's face drained of color. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. Derek found his voice first. You're lying. Am I? I pulled out my phone, opened my photo gallery, and began scrolling. Black mold spreading across bedroom walls like a cancer. Foundation cracks wide enough to fit my hand into. Brown water pooled in the basement. The septic tank excavated. Its contents spilled across the back lawn. Want me to forward these to you? You did this on purpose, Patricia shrieked, standing so fast her chair fell backward. You sabotaged the property. I did no such thing, I said calmly. Mother stopped paying the maintenance bills 8 months ago, said she couldn't afford them anymore. I looked at Linda, whose face had gone ashen. I covered what I could out of my own pocket. But I'm just a restaurant manager, remember? I don't have hedge fund money. I couldn't fix everything. Richard Townsend was examining the photos on my phone, his professional demeanor cracking slightly. These appear legitimate, he murmured. Derek grabbed my phone and began swiping through the images, his jaw clenched tighter with each one. How much did you say the repairs would cost? The estimates I received ranged from $350,000 to $450,000, I said. Depends on how extensive the mold remediation needs to be. The foundation work alone is about $120,000. Patricia looked like she might vomit. She turned on Linda. You said the house was in perfect condition. You said it was worth over $1 million. It is worth over $1 million, I said. After you spend $400,000 fixing it. Patricia lunged for the documents Richard was holding. We're tearing these up, right now. Richard pulled them back. Mrs. Castellano, they're already filed. I submitted them electronically 3 minutes ago. They're legally binding. Then unfile them. That's not how it works. You accepted the property transfer. Your brother waived his claims. The transaction is complete. Patricia's perfectly applied makeup couldn't hide the rage twisting her features. She spun on me. You planned this. You let the house fall apart so you could. So I could what? I interrupted. Give it to you? I didn't give you anything, Patricia. Mother did. I just signed papers waiving my claim to something you apparently wanted very badly. I tilted my head. Although now I'm wondering why you wanted it so much if you didn't know about the condition. Linda stood, her hands shaking. You sabotaged that property deliberately. I told you 8 months ago the septic system needed replacing, I said, my voice even. You said, and I quote, I can't throw money at every little problem. I told you about the foundation cracks 6 months ago. You said I was exaggerating. I told you about the mold 4 months ago. You hung up on me. That's a lie. I have the phone records, and the text messages, and the emails. I pocketed my phone. I documented everything, Mother, because I knew eventually you'd try to blame me. The room had gone completely silent, except for Ethan's quiet sniffling. The guests looked like they wanted to disappear into the expensive wallpaper. Patricia's voice came out as a hiss. You're going to pay for those repairs. I don't think so. Yes, you are. Because if you don't, I'm calling the police right now. I'm reporting you for embezzlement. You had access to the property accounts. You must have stolen money from the maintenance fund. My stomach dropped. She was going to frame me. Derek stepped closer, his expression dark. We'll sue you for fraud and mismanagement. You had a fiduciary duty to maintain that property properly. Linda's voice rose, shrill and desperate. I'll testify. I'll tell them Joshua had full control of the finances, that he refused to do the necessary work. The trap was closing. They were going to blame me for everything, paint me as a thief, maybe even get me arrested. I felt my chest tighten. If I had a criminal record, I could lose my job. Lose custody of Ethan. Lose everything. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out with shaking hands. A text from Gary, my boss at the restaurant. Emergency. Need you to call immediately. My blood ran cold. I held up the phone to Patricia. Excuse me. I need to take this. We're not done here, she snapped. I'll just be a minute. I walked quickly into Patricia's marble foyer, Ethan following close behind me. My hands were shaking so badly, I almost dropped the phone twice before I managed to call Gary back. He answered on the first ring. Joshua, we have a situation. What kind of situation? My heart was pounding. Someone filed a formal complaint against you with corporate. Tonight. About an hour ago. The world tilted. What? A complaint about what? Gary's voice was uncomfortable, reluctant. Sexual harassment. A female employee named Stephanie claims you made inappropriate advances toward her during her training shift last week. That's insane. My voice came out too loud. Ethan looked up at me with wide, frightened eyes. I tried to lower my volume. Gary, you know me. Stephanie is the new server I trained on Thursday. We talked about table rotation and how to handle difficult customers. That's it. I was completely professional. I believe you, Joshua. I do. But corporate doesn't care what I believe. They have protocols. When a sexual harassment complaint comes in, they're required to suspend the accused employee immediately pending investigation. Suspend? The word felt like a punch. I'm sorry. Effective immediately. You're on unpaid leave until corporate completes their investigation. Could be 2 weeks. Could be 2 months. They have to interview witnesses, review security footage, go through the whole process. Unpaid leave. I did quick math in my head. Rent was due in 5 days. $1,200. I had maybe $400 in my checking account. Ethan needed new glasses. The prescription was $90 even with my insurance. Food, utilities, gas. Gary, I can't afford unpaid leave. I live paycheck to paycheck. I know. I'm going to fight this as hard as I can, but my hands are tied. Corporate makes these decisions, not me. My mind was racing. Who filed the complaint? You said it was anonymous? The initial tip came through an anonymous phone call to corporate headquarters. But Stephanie confirmed the allegations in writing. She submitted a formal statement an hour ago. An hour ago. Right around the time I'd been sitting at Patricia's table, signing away my inheritance. Gary, the timing here is really suspicious. I've been at my sister's house all evening. This happened right in the middle of a family conflict. I don't know what to tell you, man. All I know is corporate received a complaint and they're following procedure. What did Stephanie say I did, exactly? Gary sighed. She claims you cornered her in the walk-in cooler during her break, made comments about her appearance, touched her shoulder inappropriately, asked her to meet you after work. That's a complete fabrication. I was never alone with her in the cooler. We were on the floor the entire shift, and there were at least 6 other staff members present the whole time. Then the investigation will clear you. But until then, you're suspended. I'm really sorry, Joshua. If there's anything I can do, there isn't. My voice came out flat. Thanks for letting me know. I ended the call and stood in Patricia's foyer, trying to breathe. Ethan tugged on my shirt. Dad? What's wrong? Nothing, buddy. Just work stuff. I squeezed his shoulder, trying to smile, but it wasn't nothing. Someone had orchestrated this. The timing was too perfect. An anonymous call to corporate, and then Stephanie suddenly confirming allegations that were completely false. This didn't happen by coincidence. I walked back into the dining room. Patricia was still on her phone, but she hung up quickly when she saw me. Too quickly. Everything okay? She asked, and there was something in her tone. Something that sounded almost like satisfaction. Did you contact someone at my workplace? I asked directly. She laughed. A light, tinkling sound. Joshua, I have no idea what you're talking about. Why would I care about your little restaurant job? But Derek gave it away. He mentioned it too casually, with too much familiarity. That restaurant manager position must be stressful, he said, cutting into his dessert. Corporate protocols, employee complaints, so much liability these days. Corporate protocols. The exact phrase Gary had just used, and Derek shouldn't know anything about my job structure. I'd never discussed it with him. How do you know about corporate protocols at Carmichael's? I asked. Derek's expression didn't change. but I saw his jaw tighten. Just general knowledge. All chain restaurants have similar structures. Carmichael's isn't a chain. It's independently owned with one location. Silence. Patricia jumped in. Derek does consulting work with restaurants sometimes. He knows the industry. He does hedge fund management. He diversifies. I looked between them, seeing the coordination, the planning. They'd made calls, used Derek's business connections to reach someone at my workplace, maybe offered money, maybe just leveraged relationships. However they'd done it, they'd gotten Stephanie to file false allegations, and then Linda dropped the real bomb. She stood from her chair, her posture rigid. "Joshua, I think we need to discuss a solution here." Her voice was calm, measured. "You're clearly struggling. No stable income now. Living in inadequate housing. Unable to properly care for your son." She gestured to Ethan, who pressed closer to my leg. "Maybe it's time to consider what's best for the child." My blood turned to ice. "What are you saying?" "Patricia and Derek can give Ethan a proper life. Good schools, a stable home, everything he deserves." She clasped her hands together. "If you agree to pay for the beach house repairs using your savings and whatever loans you can secure, and sign over your parental rights to Patricia, we can make these problems disappear." The room spun. "They wanted to take my son." "You're insane," I breathed. "We're being practical," Patricia said. "Look at yourself, Joshua. You're about to be unemployed. You'll lose your apartment. What are you going to do? Live in your car with a 7-year-old? I'd rather live in my car with him than let him anywhere near you." Derek stood, his face hardening. "Be reasonable. We're offering you a way out. Sign the papers, and we'll make a few calls. The harassment complaint disappears. You get your job back. You walk away from the beach house debt. Everyone wins. Everyone except Ethan, who loses his father. He gains a real family," Linda said coldly. Ethan was crying again, clinging to my leg with both arms. I could feel him shaking, my hands curled into fists at my sides. I'd never wanted to hit someone as badly as I wanted to hit Derek in that moment. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus Chen, a friend from college who'd become a lawyer. We'd stayed in touch over the years, meeting for beers every few months. I'd texted him earlier when things started going south, just a quick need advice about family legal issue. His message read, "Just saw your text. Don't sign anything else. Coming to you now. What's the address?" I texted back Patricia's address. "Who are you texting?" Patricia demanded. "A friend." "What kind of friend?" "The kind who's a lawyer." Her expression shifted. "You can't afford a lawyer. Marcus is a friend. He'll help me." I looked at Linda, at Patricia, at Derek. "I'm not signing anything. I'm not giving up my son. And I'm not paying for a house that Mother let fall apart through her own negligence." "Then you'll be arrested," Patricia said flatly. "For embezzlement, for harassment, for child neglect when you can't provide for Ethan anymore. We'll see about that." I turned to leave, Ethan's hand tight in mine. But before I reached the door, Patricia's voice stopped me. "I already called them." I turned back slowly. "Called who?" "Child Protective Services. While you were on the phone, I explained the situation. A social worker is on her way here right now." My heart stopped. "You what?" I told them everything. That you're unstable. That you've been suspended from work for sexual harassment. That you're living in poverty with a child and can't provide adequate care. That I'm concerned for my nephew's welfare." Linda added, tears forming in her eyes. Fake tears that made me sick. "I'm his grandmother." I told them I'm worried. That Joshua has been erratic lately. That I fear for Ethan's safety. I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. CPS. They could take Ethan tonight. Put him in emergency foster care while they investigated. I'd heard stories. Kids torn from parents over false allegations. Investigations that dragged on for months. "You can't do this," I said. But my voice sounded weak even to my own ears. "I just did," Patricia replied. 20 minutes later, there was a knock at the door. Patricia answered it with a concerned expression perfectly arranged on her face. A woman in her 40s entered, wearing a rumpled suit and carrying a worn briefcase. She looked exhausted, like she'd already dealt with 5 crises today, and this was number 6. "I'm Carol Henderson, Child Protective Services," she said, showing her identification. "I received a call about a child welfare concern." Patricia launched into her rehearsed speech. Joshua's instability, his suspension from work for sexual harassment, his inability to provide, his inadequate housing. She painted a picture of me as a barely functioning parent on the edge of collapse. Linda joined in, crying softly, describing how worried she was, how she'd tried to help but I refused, how Ethan had lost weight, how the child seemed anxious all the time. None of it was true. Ethan was healthy, happy, doing well in school, but Carol Henderson didn't know that. She just saw an expensive mansion full of concerned family members versus one tired-looking man who'd clearly been through an emotional ringer tonight. "I need to interview the child," Carol said, privately. My heart was pounding so hard I thought everyone could hear it. "Ethan, it's okay. Just tell the truth." Carol led him into Patricia's study and closed the door. The longest 15 minutes of my life followed. I stood in the foyer, Marcus's arrival 20 minutes away, watching that closed door and imagining every terrible outcome. What if Ethan was too scared to speak? What if Carol misinterpreted something he said? What if Patricia had coached him somehow when I wasn't looking? Finally, the door opened. Carol emerged, her expression dark and unreadable. Ethan followed, his face red from crying but his jaw set in a way that reminded me of myself. "Mr. Bennett," Carol said, "I need to speak with you privately. Now." My legs nearly gave out. This was it. They were taking him. I followed her outside onto Patricia's front porch, my vision tunneling. Carol closed the door behind us and turned to face me. "Your son told me something very concerning." I couldn't breathe. "He says his aunt offered him $50 earlier today to lie and say you hit him. Is this true?" The world stopped spinning. "What?" Carol's expression was granite hard. "Ethan said that this afternoon, before you came to dinner, your sister sent him a text message. He showed it to me. It says, quote, 'Tell them your dad hurts you, and I'll give you $50 and you can live with your cousins.' End quote." My mind struggled to process what she was saying. "Ethan showed you a text?" From a phone number he identified as belonging to Patricia Castellano, I photographed it. Carol pulled out her own phone and showed me the image. There it was, Patricia's number at the top, the message exactly as Carol had described. Timestamp, 3:47 this afternoon. "I don't understand," I said. "Ethan doesn't have a phone." "He does. He showed me. An older model smartphone. He said you gave it to him for emergencies. I had given him an old phone 6 months ago after his school had a lockdown scare. Just a cheap device with basic service so he could call me if he needed to. He barely used it. I'd forgotten he still carried it in his backpack." She texted my son. I said slowly, the horror of it sinking in. "She tried to get him to make false abuse allegations against me." "That's witness tampering," Carol said. "And child endangerment. I'm calling my supervisor and the police. Right now." She stepped away and made 2 phone calls in quick succession. I stood on the porch shaking. Patricia had tried to use my son, had offered him money to destroy me, had been willing to traumatize a 7-year-old child to get what she wanted. I walked back inside. The dining room had gone quiet. Patricia, Derek, and Linda stood in a cluster, talking in low, urgent voices. They stopped when they saw me. "What did she say?" Patricia demanded. "When is she taking him?" "She's not," I replied. Before Patricia could respond, Carol came back inside. Her supervisor was apparently already nearby and arrived within 5 minutes. 2 police officers followed shortly after. The dining room, which had been the site of my humiliation an hour earlier, became something else entirely. Carol showed the officers the text message on Ethan's phone. Patricia immediately went on the defensive. "That's fake. The kid must have made it up. He's a troubled child. He has problems with lying." But the officers weren't listening to her excuses. They were looking at the phone records, at the number, at the timestamp. Marcus arrived in the middle of the chaos. He took one look at the scene, pulled me aside, and I explained everything in a rapid whisper. His expression grew darker with each sentence. "This is attempted witness tampering," Marcus said loud enough for everyone to hear, "and child endangerment. You tried to coerce a minor into making false allegations of abuse." Derek tried to take control. "Now hold on. Let's all calm down. This is clearly a misunderstanding. Patricia would never—" "I have the text message right here," Carol interrupted. "Photographed and documented. There's no misunderstanding." One of the officers, a tall woman with gray, streaking her hair, turned to Patricia. "Ma'am, we need you to come with us to answer some questions." "You're arresting me?" Patricia's voice went shrill. "This is ridiculous. Call our lawyer. Derek, call Richard." Richard Townsend, who'd been standing in the corner looking increasingly uncomfortable, stepped forward. "Mrs. Castellano, I'm an estate attorney. You need a criminal defense lawyer. I can't help you with this. You're supposed to be on retainer for estate planning, not for criminal charges." He was already edging toward the door. The officer pulled out handcuffs. "Mrs. Castellano, you have the right to remain silent." Patricia's face went red. "This is your fault," she screamed at me. "You set this up. You made Ethan lie." The officer continued reading Miranda rights, while her partner cuffed Patricia's wrists behind her back. Derek was shouting about police overreach and threatening lawsuits. Linda was crying, real tears this time, as she watched her favorite child being arrested in front of her country club friends. The guests had long since made excuses and fled. Only the catering staff remained, watching the drama unfold with wide eyes. As the officers led Patricia toward the door, she turned back to me one last time. "You think you've won?" she spat. "You have nothing. No job, no money, no house. Even if I go down, you're still destroyed." The officers took her outside. Through the window, I watched them put her in the back of a police car. Derek was on his phone, probably calling every lawyer he knew. Marcus touched my arm. "We need to talk. Outside." We stepped onto the porch, Ethan between us. Marcus crouched down to Ethan's level. "You did the right thing, buddy. Telling the truth. That took a lot of courage." Ethan nodded, wiping his eyes. Marcus stood and turned to me. His expression was serious. "Joshua, I need to tell you something. After you texted me, I had a bad feeling about this situation. I called a friend who's a private investigator. Asked him to do a quick background check on a few things." "Okay?" He looked into Stephanie, the woman who accused you of harassment. My stomach clenched. "And?" "She received a wire transfer this morning. $15,000 from an account belonging to Derek's investment firm." The world tilted again. "He paid her to lie about me. That's what it looks like. It's fraud, witness tampering, and conspiracy. We have them." Marcus pulled out his phone and showed me a screenshot of bank records his investigator had obtained. "This should be enough to get the harassment complaint thrown out and get you reinstated immediately." Relief flooded through me. So intense I felt dizzy. "I can get my job back." "You'll get your job back, and Derek is going to face serious criminal charges. This isn't some minor offense. This is coordinated harassment and fraud." I wanted to feel victorious, but Patricia's words echoed in my mind. Even with her facing charges, I'd still lost my inheritance. Still signed away rights to the beach house and the family trust. Still, Marcus was smiling slightly. "There's more." "More? Remember the beach house? The one I just signed away rights to forever?" "Yeah, about that." Marcus pulled up something on his phone. I pulled the property records while I was driving over. "Joshua, your mother never actually owned that house outright." I stared at him. "What do you know about that? Your father bought it before he died, right? 12 years ago he passed away?" "Yes. The property never went through proper probate. Your mother only had what's called a life estate. She could live there, use it, maintain it, but she couldn't transfer full ownership to anyone. She didn't have the legal authority." My head was spinning. "So the papers I signed tonight are worthless. Linda never had the right to execute those documents. The house is still technically part of your father's estate, which by law should have been divided between his two children equally, you and Patricia. So I still own half of it? Not just half. Patricia's about to face serious criminal charges. If she's convicted, There are provisions in estate law that can disqualify someone from inheriting property obtained through fraud or coercion. You might end up owning the whole thing. I couldn't speak, couldn't process it all. Marcus continued. And that family trust? The 300,000 Linda mentioned? Your father established that trust specifically for both children equally. I found the original trust documents. Linda violated her fiduciary duty as trustee by trying to give it all to Patricia. That's illegal. You're entitled to half, maybe more, depending on how the court views her breach of duty. How do you know all this? I called in some favors, made some calls while I was driving, had people pulling records. He put his hand on my shoulder. I've already filed emergency motions to freeze all the assets and contest those fraudulent documents you signed. First thing tomorrow morning, we're going to court. The door opened behind us. Carol Henderson stepped out. Mr. Bennett, I've completed my initial assessment. Based on what I've observed tonight and Ethan's statements, I'm closing this case. There's no evidence of neglect or abuse. In fact, your son appears well cared for and strongly bonded to you. She glanced back at the house. I'm recommending charges against Mrs. Castellano for false reporting and child endangerment. Thank you, I managed to say. She nodded and walked to her car. Another crisis worker, another emergency. I watched her drive away and thought about how close I'd come to losing everything. My phone rang. Gary's name on the screen. I answered. Hello? Joshua. I just got a very interesting call from corporate. They reviewed the complaint against you and found some irregularities. Specifically, a wire transfer from a Derek Castellano to Stephanie Morrison the same day she filed her allegations. I know. My lawyer found it. Stephanie just confessed. Said Derek approached her a week ago, offered her money to file a false complaint. She's being terminated, and they're pursuing prosecution. Corporate wants you back immediately. Tomorrow morning, with back pay for tonight, and they want me to tell you they're sorry and they're conducting a full investigation into how this happened. I closed my eyes. Thank you, Gary. Don't thank me. Thank whoever found that wire transfer. That's what saved you. He paused. Take the night off. Be with your kid. We'll see you tomorrow. I hung up and looked at Marcus. I have my job back. Good, he smiled. Now let's talk about how we're going to make your family pay for what they tried to do. The next 2 months were a blur of legal proceedings, depositions, and court appearances. Marcus worked pro bono, refusing my offers to pay him, saying this was personal now after he saw what my family had tried to do. Patricia was charged with 3 counts of witness tampering, 2 counts of child endangerment, and 1 count of conspiracy to commit fraud. Derek faced charges for bribing Stephanie, conspiracy, and wire fraud. The hedge fund he worked for launched an internal investigation and suspended him without pay. His reputation in the financial community crumbled overnight. Word spread fast in those circles. Linda tried to claim innocence, saying she'd been manipulated by Patricia, but Marcus had recordings. Ethan's phone had recorded part of the dinner conversation. Not everything, but enough. Linda's voice clearly stating she wanted me to sign over parental rights. Her admission that she'd called CPS, her coordination with Patricia throughout the evening. The estate attorney, Richard Townsend, turned witness for the prosecution to avoid being charged as an accessory. He testified that Linda and Patricia had planned the entire evening in advance, including having him present to make the document signing seem official and irrefutable. The beach house situation unraveled exactly as Marcus predicted. The documents I'd signed were invalidated. A judge ruled that Linda had exceeded her authority and acted in bad faith. The property was evaluated, and even with the needed repairs, it was worth $800,000. Patricia's claim to it evaporated when the fraud came to light. The family trust was even more complicated. Linda had been slowly draining it over the years, giving Patricia loans that were never repaid. The original $300,000 had dwindled to $180,000. But that money, plus what could be recovered from Patricia through asset seizure, meant Ethan would have something for college after all. Through it all, I kept working at Carmichael's. Gary gave me more responsibilities, a promotion to assistant general manager with a raise. Not huge money, but enough that I could breathe a little easier. Ethan started therapy to process what had happened. His therapist said he was resilient, that he'd be okay, but that he needed time to understand that his family's cruelty wasn't his fault. We had sessions together too, learning how to talk about the trauma and move forward. Patricia and Derek's world collapsed. She was convicted on 2 of the 3 witness tampering charges and sentenced to 18 months in prison, suspended to probation and community service. Derek got 3 years probation and a massive fine. His career was over. The hedge fund fired him. Other firms wouldn't touch him. Last I heard, he was working at his father's car dealership in Pennsylvania, a humiliating fall from his former status. Patricia's country club friends abandoned her. The scandal was too juicy, too public. Her children were withdrawn from their private school after other parents complained. Derek and Patricia had to sell their mansion to pay legal fees and restitution. They moved into a rental house in a modest neighborhood, their previous life of luxury completely destroyed. Linda tried to reconcile with me. She called, sent letters, even showed up at my apartment once. I refused to engage. Marcus sent her a cease and desist letter. Some wounds don't heal just because the person who caused them says they're sorry. She'd been willing to take my child. That wasn't something I could forgive. The property battle concluded in my favor. The judge awarded me 70% ownership of the beach house, citing Patricia's fraud and Linda's mismanagement. Patricia kept 30%, but with the repair costs exceeding $400,000, her share was essentially worthless unless someone paid to fix the property. I had a decision to make: keep the house and find a way to pay for repairs, or sell my share and walk away. Marcus advised me to sell. Take the money and move on. Build something new. I thought about it for weeks. The beach house represented my father, the good memories of childhood before everything went wrong. But it also represented Linda's favoritism, Patricia's cruelty, years of being told I wasn't good enough. I decided to sell my 70% share to a development company that wanted to renovate and flip the property. They paid me $600,000 for my stake, handling the repairs themselves and dealing with Patricia's minority ownership. $600,000. More money than I'd ever imagined having. I paid off my debts first. Credit cards I'd been carrying since the divorce. The small loan I'd taken for Ethan's medical bills last year. Then I set up a college fund for Ethan, putting $200,000 in a trust he couldn't access until he turned 18. With the remaining money, I made a choice that surprised even Marcus. I bought a small restaurant space that was closing down in a neighborhood near my apartment. Not a fancy area, not upscale. Just a working-class community, where families lived paycheck to paycheck, where kids like Ethan grew up knowing what it meant to be hungry sometimes. I renovated it myself over 3 months, working nights and weekends. Gary gave me time off when he could. Marcus helped with the legal paperwork. Even Ethan pitched in, painting walls and arranging furniture, excited to be part of something new. I called it Bennett's Table. Simple name, simple concept, affordable, quality food, generous portions, and one absolute rule that I printed on every menu and painted on the wall behind the register: every child eats, no exceptions. If a family came in and couldn't afford meals for their kids, the kids ate free. If a single parent came in looking exhausted and worried, I made sure their child's plate was full. If someone was counting change to see if they had enough for dinner, I found a way to make it work. I hired staff from the neighborhood, people who needed second chances, who understood struggle, who would treat every customer with dignity. The restaurant opened 6 months after that nightmare dinner at Patricia's mansion. I spent my savings on equipment, inventory, and hiring good people. It was a risk. Most restaurants fail in the first year, but I didn't care about becoming wealthy. I cared about building something that mattered. The opening night was small, just friends, neighbors, a few local business owners. Gary came and brought half the staff from Carmichael's. Marcus was there with his wife. Ethan stood beside me at the door, greeting people with a shy smile. No lobster platters, no private chefs, just good food, fair prices, and tables full of people who appreciated both. We made it through the first month, then the second. Word spread in the neighborhood, the place with the kind owner. the restaurant where kids always got fed, where the portions were generous and the prices were honest. By month 3, we were profitable. By month 6, we were busy every night. I had to hire more staff, had to expand the kitchen, had to start a waiting list for weekend reservations. A local newspaper did a story about the restaurant and its every child eats policy. The article mentioned my background as a single father, though I'd asked them to keep the details about Patricia and the court case private. The story went regional, then got picked up by a few national outlets looking for feel-good content. Donations started coming in. People sending $50, $100, specifically earmarked for feeding kids whose families couldn't pay. I set up a fund and hired an accountant to manage it properly. The money went directly to covering children's meals, with complete transparency about how every dollar was spent. One evening, about 9 months after opening, a family came in. Parents in their 30s, 3 kids ranging from maybe 5 to 12. The parents looked exhausted, stressed. I recognized that look. I'd worn it myself countless times. They sat down and studied the menu carefully. Too carefully. I watched the mother add up prices in her head, watched the father's jaw clench when the oldest boy asked if he could get a burger. I walked over to their table. "Evening, folks. First time here?" The father nodded. "We heard good things." "Well, I appreciate that." I smiled at the kids. "What do you guys like to eat?" The youngest girl, maybe 5 years old, said softly, "I like chicken nuggets. We make really good chicken nuggets here. Fresh, not frozen." I pulled out my order pad. "Tell you what, tonight's a special night. We're trying out some new menu items, and we need opinions from expert tasters. Think you 3 could help us out?" The meals would be on the house, of course. "We just need you to tell us what you think." The parents started to protest, but I held up my hand gently. "It's purely for market research. We're a small business, and we need honest feedback. You'd actually be doing us a favor." The mother's eyes were shining with tears. She understood what I was really offering. "That's very kind of you." "Not kind, just good business." I winked at the kids. "So what'll it be?" The children ordered burgers, chicken nuggets, pasta. The parents ordered more modestly, but I made sure the kitchen sent out generous portions for everyone. When the food came, I watched those kids' faces light up, watched them eat without anxiety, without worry, without the weight of knowing their family was struggling. The father tried to leave a large tip, probably more than he could afford. I refused it. "Just come back sometime," I said. "That's all I ask." They did come back, and they brought friends, and those friends brought others. The restaurant became known as a place where families mattered more than profit, where children weren't afterthoughts, where dignity was served alongside every meal. I thought about Patricia sometimes, about her mansion and her lobster platters, and her contempt for anyone she considered beneath her, about how she'd measured worth in dollars and status symbols. She'd tried to destroy me by taking everything away. But in taking everything away, she'd accidentally set me free, free from chasing her approval, free from trying to measure up to mother's impossible standards, free from believing that my worth was tied to wealth or status. I built something better than what they had. Not bigger, not fancier, but better. Built on kindness instead of cruelty, on inclusion instead of exclusion, on the simple belief that everyone deserves a seat at the table. 1 year after opening Bennett's Table, I was in the kitchen during the dinner rush when Marcus called. I almost didn't answer. We were slammed. 3 servers out sick, and I was covering expediting while trying to help prep. "Kind of a bad time," I said, phone wedged between my shoulder and ear while I plated a burger. "This can't wait. Are you sitting down?" "I'm expediting." So new. "Patricia's in the hospital." My hand stilled on the plate. "What happened?" "Overdose. Prescription pills. Her neighbor found her this morning." Marcus paused. "She left a note. She's going to be okay physically, but Joshua, she's not doing well. Derek left her. Took the kids and filed for full custody. She's broke, facing foreclosure on the rental house, and completely isolated." I felt a complicated surge of emotions. Anger, pity, vindication, guilt for feeling vindicated. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because Linda called me." begging me to get you to help Patricia. She says you're the only one who can." I laughed, a bitter sound. The woman who tried to take my son? Who offered him money to lie about me? I should help her? I'm just the messenger. But there's something else. Marcus's voice changed. "Linda wants to meet with you. Says she has information you need to hear. About your father." That stopped me. What kind of information? She wouldn't tell me. Just said it's important. That you deserve to know the truth. I thought about hanging up. About refusing. About letting Patricia face the consequences of her actions alone. The way she'd tried to leave me isolated and destroyed. But something in me couldn't do it. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was the year I'd spent building a restaurant based on compassion and second chances. Maybe I was just curious about what Linda wanted to say about Dad. Fine, I'll meet her. Once. But not at her house and not at the hospital. Neutral territory. I'll set it up. 2 days later, I met Linda at a coffee shop downtown. She looked older than I remembered. Smaller somehow. Her expensive clothes were gone, replaced with department store casual wear. Her jewelry was minimal. She looked like what she was, a woman who'd lost everything. I sat down across from her without ordering anything. I didn't plan to stay long. "Thank you for coming," she said. Her voice was hoarse. I said nothing. "Patricia tried to kill herself. Did Marcus tell you?" "He did. She's in psychiatric care now. 72-hour hold. Derek's lawyer is using it to build a case for sole custody. He's going to win. Patricia will lose her children. She tried to take mine," I said flatly. Linda flinched. I know what we did was unforgivable. I'm not here to ask for forgiveness." "Then why are you here?" She pulled an envelope from her purse. Old, yellowed with age, my father's handwriting on the front. To be opened in the event of Linda's death or misconduct. "Your father left this with his lawyer 30 years ago. Instructions that if anything happened to him, and if I ever violated the terms of his will or trust, this letter should be given to you and Patricia." She slid it across the table. "Richard Townsend found it in the old files after the court case. He gave it to me 6 months ago. I should have given it to you then, but I was too ashamed." I stared at the envelope. "What's in it?" "Read it, please." I opened it carefully. The paper inside was brittle, the ink faded but readable. My father's handwriting. Seeing it again after 12 years made my throat tight. "My dear sons and daughters," it began. I noticed he used plural, sons. "If you are reading this, then something has gone wrong with the plans Linda and I made. Let me explain something that I kept secret to protect you both. Joshua is not Linda's biological son. He is the child of my first marriage to Catherine, who died when Joshua was 2 years old. Linda adopted him when we married, and we agreed to raise him as our own, never telling him the truth unless circumstances required it. I established the trust and property rights equally because both of you are my children, and I love you equally. But I fear Linda's family may pressure her to favor Patricia, her biological child. I have seen signs of this. If that happens, if she violates the trust I placed in her to treat you both fairly, then you must know the truth. Joshua, you are not obligated to accept unfair treatment. You have every right to your inheritance, and the law supports you. Patricia, if you are reading this, then your mother has made terrible choices. Do not follow her path. Money and status are empty without character and compassion. I love you both. I wish I could have lived to guide you through life. Be kind to each other. Take care of each other. That is my final request. Your father, David Bennett." I read it 3 times. My hands shook. Catherine, I had no memory of her. Linda was the only mother I'd ever known. "Why didn't you tell me?" My voice came out rough. "David and I agreed it was better for you not to know. You were so young when Catherine died. You called me Mom from the beginning. We thought it would be easier." Linda's eyes were red. "But my family always knew. My mother, my sister. They treated you differently. Subtly at first, then more openly as you got older. They pushed me to favor Patricia because she was really mine. I listened to them. I let them convince me that Patricia deserved more because she was my biological child. You chose to treat me like I was worth less. Yes, I did. And I destroyed our family because of it. She wiped her eyes. David would be ashamed of me. He trusted me to love you both equally, and I failed him. I failed you. I stood up, the letter clutched in my hand. You're right. He would be ashamed. Joshua, please. Patricia needs help. I know she doesn't deserve it, but she's my daughter. She's sick. And her children, your niece and nephews, they're going to lose their mother. I can't help her. I have nothing left. But you do. You have the restaurant. You have stability. You could. I could what? Take in the woman who tried to frame me for child abuse? Who tried to steal my son? Are you insane? I know how it sounds. But those children are innocent. And Patricia, for all her faults, loves them. If she loses them, she won't survive it. Please, not for Patricia, not for me. For them. I thought about Madison, Trevor, and Chloe. 3 kids who'd been raised to think they were better than everyone else, who'd mocked Ethan for being poor, who'd watched their mother get arrested, and their father abandon them. 3 kids who were learning the same lesson Ethan learned that night at the dinner table, that cruelty has consequences, and sometimes those consequences destroy everything you thought was secure. What exactly are you asking me to do? Talk to Derek. He respects success. You've built a successful business. You have a good reputation now. If you advocated for Patricia keeping shared custody, if you showed the court that she has family support, it might make a difference. Why would I do that? Because you're better than we are. Because you built a restaurant on the principle that children deserve to be fed and cared for, regardless of circumstances. Because those are your father's grandchildren too, and he would want you to help them. She was manipulating me, using Dad's memory and my own values against me. I knew it, and it still worked. I folded the letter and put it in my pocket. I'll think about it. Thank you. That's all I ask. I left the coffee shop and sat in my car for 20 minutes, staring at nothing. Ethan was at school. I had 4 hours before I needed to pick him up. I drove to the cemetery where Dad was buried. I hadn't visited in over a year. Work and life and everything else always got in the way. I stood in front of his headstone and pulled out the letter. I found out something today, I said out loud, feeling foolish but needing to speak. I found out Mom isn't my real mom, that you were married before, that Catherine was my mother. The wind rustled through the trees surrounding the cemetery. I'm angry about it, about the lies, about Linda treating me like I was less than Patricia because I wasn't hers. But I'm also angry at you. You left me with her. You trusted her to do the right thing, and she didn't. You should have known. You should have protected me better. Silence. Just wind and distant traffic. But you did protect me. With this letter. With the trust and the property rights. You made sure I'd be okay even if Linda failed. So thank you for that. I stood there another few minutes, then drove to the hospital where Patricia was being held. The psychiatric ward was on the 4th floor. Secure doors, check-in procedures, the clinical smell of institutional care. A nurse escorted me to a visiting room. Patricia sat at a table, wearing hospital scrubs, her hair unwashed and flat. She looked up when I entered, and her expression cycled through surprise, shame, and something like relief. Joshua. You came. I sat down across from her. Linda told me what happened. I'm sure she painted a very sympathetic picture. Actually, she mostly talked about how she failed Dad. And me. Patricia's jaw clenched. She told you about Catherine. She did. I've known since I was 12. Overheard Mom talking to Aunt Helen about it. They talked about you like you were some obligation Mom was stuck with. Like you weren't really part of our family. She looked down at her hands. I'm sorry. For all of it. For treating you the way I did. For trying to take Ethan. For everything. Why did you do it? We were never close, but we weren't enemies. Why did you hate me so much? She was quiet for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was small. I didn't hate you. I was jealous of you. Jealous? Of what? Of the way Dad looked at you. Even though you weren't his biological son, he loved you so much. He was so proud of everything you did. When you graduated high school, when you got your first job, when Ethan was born. He lit up talking about you. Tears rolled down her face. I did everything right. Perfect grades, perfect marriage, perfect children. But Dad never looked at me the way he looked at you. Because you were good. Actually good. Kind and hard-working and genuine. And I was just performing. I didn't know what to say to that. After Dad died, Mom and I became this team, the two of us against you. It felt like we finally had something that was just ours, but it was toxic. It turned us into monsters. She wiped her face. I destroyed my life trying to destroy yours, and now Derek's taking my kids. And I deserve it. I deserve all of it. Maybe you do, I said. But your kids don't deserve to lose their mother. She looked up, hope flickering in her eyes. Are you going to help me? I thought about everything. The pain, the betrayal, the year of rebuilding. I thought about Ethan and how he'd feel if I let my niece and nephews suffer because I couldn't forgive their mother. I thought about Dad's letter and his final request. Take care of each other. I'll talk to Derek, I said. I'll advocate for shared custody. But I have conditions. Anything. You get serious help. Real therapy, not just the minimum required by the court. You work on yourself. You acknowledge what you did to me and Ethan, not just in private but publicly if needed. And you never, ever come near my son unsupervised until he's old enough to decide for himself if he wants a relationship with you. I agree. All of it. And one more thing. When you get out of here, when you get your life together, you're going to volunteer at Bennett's table every week. You're going to serve food to families who can't afford it. You're going to look into the faces of kids whose parents are struggling, and you're going to remember what you did to Ethan. Her voice cracked. Okay. I stood to leave. Joshua, she called. Thank you. You're a better person than I ever was. That's a low bar, Patricia. I left the hospital and called Derek. The conversation was tense, hostile at first. He didn't want to hear anything I had to say, but I was persistent. I pointed out that Madison, Trevor, and Chloe needed their mother. That Patricia was getting help. That completely cutting her out would damage the kids more than supervised visitation would. I also pointed out that if he pushed for sole custody and won, Patricia would likely end up homeless and completely destroyed, and his children would grow up knowing their father had done that. Was that the legacy he wanted? It took 3 more conversations, but eventually Derek agreed to a modified custody arrangement. Patricia would have supervised visitation while she was in treatment, then gradually increased time with the kids as she progressed. It wasn't everything she wanted, but it was more than she deserved. 2 years after that nightmare dinner at Patricia's mansion, life had settled into something I never expected. Peace. Bennett's table was thriving. We'd expanded twice, adding more seating and hiring 12 full-time staff members. The Every Child Eats program had served over 4,000 free meals to kids from families struggling to make ends meet. We'd been featured in 3 major food magazines and a national morning show, not for innovative cuisine but for what the host called revolutionary compassion in action. The donations kept coming. We'd set up a proper non-profit arm of the restaurant, with a board of directors and transparent financial reporting. Every dollar donated went directly to feeding children, and we published monthly reports showing exactly how the money was spent. People trusted us because we earned that trust every single day. Ethan was 9 now, thriving in school, playing Little League baseball, and showing signs of inheriting his grandfather's kindness. He still carried that old phone, though he barely used it. He said he kept it as a reminder of the night everything changed. His therapist said that was healthy, that he was processing the trauma by acknowledging it rather than suppressing it. Patricia kept her word. After 3 months in intensive treatment, she started volunteering at the restaurant every Saturday. She arrived at 8 in the morning and worked until we closed at 9. She served food, cleared tables, washed dishes, and talked to customers with genuine humility I'd never seen in her before. The first time Madison, Trevor, and Chloe came to visit her during her shift, they seemed shocked to see their mother in an apron, serving food to people who couldn't pay. But over time, something shifted in them too. They started asking questions, started understanding that their previous life had been built on cruelty and exclusion. Madison, now 12, asked me one day if she could volunteer too. I said yes. Now she came every other Saturday with her mother, learning what it meant to serve rather than be served. Derek never apologized, but he did write a substantial check to the restaurant's non-profit fund. I think it was his way of trying to pay for his conscience. I accepted it because the money fed kids, and that mattered more than my pride. Linda tried several times to rebuild a relationship with me. I remained cordial but distant. Some bridges, once burned, can't be rebuilt. She sent birthday cards to Ethan with money inside. I let him decide whether to accept them. Usually, he donated the money to the restaurant's fund for feeding kids. He said, "Other people need it more than me, Dad." That was all David Bennett, my real father, coming through in his grandson. I'd framed Dad's letter and hung it in my apartment where I could see it every day. The truth about Catherine, my biological mother, had been jarring at first. But in time, I realized it didn't change anything that mattered. Dad had chosen to be my father. He'd loved me, protected me, and made sure I'd be taken care of even after he was gone. That was what counted. I visited his grave every month now, usually taking Ethan with me. We'd talk about Dad, about the restaurant, about life. I told Ethan stories about his grandfather that I'd forgotten over the years. How Dad used to take me fishing even though neither of us ever caught anything. How he'd taught me to change a tire in the driveway on a Saturday afternoon. How he'd told me that a man's worth wasn't measured in dollars but in the lives he touched. I finally understood what Dad had been trying to teach me all along. Success wasn't about mansions and lobster dinners and impressing people who didn't matter. Success was building something meaningful, creating a space where people felt valued, showing up for your kid, treating others with dignity, even when they didn't treat you the same way. The restaurant became more than a business. It became a community center. We started hosting birthday parties for families who couldn't afford them. Free, with cake and decorations and a meal. We partnered with local schools to provide dinner for kids in after-school programs whose parents worked late shifts. We hired people coming out of difficult circumstances, formerly incarcerated individuals, people in recovery, single parents struggling to find employers who'd work with their schedules. Marcus became my business partner, handling all the legal aspects and helping me navigate the non-profit regulations. He refused to take a salary, saying that seeing the restaurant succeed was payment enough. His wife, Angela, designed our website and managed our social media presence. They became family, the kind you choose rather than the kind you're born into. One evening, about 2.5 years after opening, a couple came into the restaurant with their 3 children. I recognized them immediately, the family from that first night, the ones I'd told we needed expert tasters for new menu items. The father approached me with his hand extended. "Mr. Bennett? I don't know if you remember us." "I do. How are you folks doing?" "Better, much better. I got a promotion at work 6 months ago. We're in a better place financially." He pulled out his wallet. "I wanted to pay you back for that meal. And all the other times we came in, and you found reasons to comp our kids' food. I know what you were doing. I want to pay it forward." He handed me $500 in cash. I tried to refuse it. "That's not necessary. Please, let me do this. You helped us when we needed it. Now I want to help other families the way you helped mine." I accepted the money and put it directly into the nonprofit fund. "This will feed a lot of kids." "Thank you." His wife had tears in her eyes. "You don't know what you did for us. Those were dark times. We were barely making rent. And you made us feel like we mattered, like our kids mattered. That gave us hope to keep fighting." After they left, I stood in the restaurant looking around at the full tables, at the families eating and laughing, at Ethan doing homework in the corner booth while occasionally looking up to wave at me. I thought about Patricia's mansion, about that dinner table where my son had been given only water while others feasted. I'd learned my place that night, and it wasn't beneath anyone. It wasn't in some hierarchy determined by wealth or status, or who your biological parents were. My place was here, creating something that actually mattered, building a legacy that Dad would be proud of. The greatest revenge wasn't destroying Patricia or proving Linda wrong. The greatest revenge was becoming so secure in my own worth, so grounded in my values, that their opinions became completely irrelevant. They'd tried to diminish me, to make me feel small and worthless. Instead, they'd inadvertently shown me what I didn't want to be, and in rejecting their cruelty, I'd found my purpose. I thought about that moment when Patricia slid the water glass to Ethan and said, "We don't feed extras." How Linda had added, "You should know your place." How I'd smiled and said, "Noted." I'd noted it all right. I'd noted that their version of family was transactional. Their version of love was conditional. Their version of success was hollow. And I'd built something different. Something better. Something real. The restaurant represented more than business success or financial stability. It represented the choice to respond to cruelty with compassion, to answer exclusion with inclusion, to transform pain into purpose. Every child who ate at Bennett's table, every family who felt welcomed and valued, every person who walked through the doors and was treated with dignity, they were all part of the answer to Patricia's cruelty. They were all proof that there's a better way to live, a better way to treat people, a better way to define worth. I learned that family isn't about blood or biology. It's about who shows up, who stays, who fights for you when everything falls apart. Marcus showed up, Gary showed up, my staff at the restaurant showed up, the community showed up. They were my real family. I learned that your darkest moment can become your greatest teacher. That night at Patricia's mansion, watching my son cry from hunger while being mocked by his own relatives, I wanted to disappear. I wanted to give up. But Ethan needed me to be strong. And in finding that strength, I discovered I was capable of more than I'd ever imagined. I learned that forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting or excusing. It means refusing to let someone else's toxicity poison your future. I helped Patricia not because she deserved it, but because her children deserved a mother, and because helping her was consistent with the values I wanted to live by. That was for me, not for her. Most importantly, I learned that real wealth has nothing to do with money. I'm wealthy because I can look my son in the eyes and know I did the right thing. I'm wealthy because I built something that helps people. I'm wealthy because I broke the cycle of cruelty and created something better for the next generation. Patricia had lobster platters and a mansion and all the trappings of success, but she had to destroy everything to learn what actually mattered. I got there faster because I never had the luxury of pretending money could replace character. The measuring stick isn't how big your house is or how expensive your dinner is or whether you impress people at country clubs. The measuring stick is whether you can look at yourself in the mirror and recognize the person staring back, whether your children want to be like you, whether the world is slightly better because you were in it. By that measure, I'm the wealthiest person I know. 3 years after that nightmare dinner, on Ethan's 10th birthday, I hosted a party at the restaurant. Not a fancy affair, just his friends from school, some neighbors, and the people who'd become our chosen family. Patricia came with Madison, Trevor, and Chloe. It was the first time she'd been invited to anything family-related, and she seemed nervous. But Ethan, in his wisdom and kindness, went up to her and said, "Thanks for coming, Aunt Patricia. I'm glad you're here." She started crying right there in the middle of the party. Madison hugged her, and I realized that healing isn't linear, and it's never complete, but it's possible. Even after terrible betrayal, even after unforgivable cruelty, small moments of grace can start to repair what was broken. I won't ever forget what Patricia and Linda did. The wounds they inflicted run deep. But I won't let those wounds define me. I won't let their cruelty determine how I treat others or how I build my life. Because I know my place now. Not the place Linda tried to assign me. Not the place Patricia tried to force me into. But the place I chose for myself. My place is standing tall, with integrity, with compassion, with my son beside me, building a life based on values that actually matter. My place is at a table where everyone is welcome, where children are fed, where dignity is never negotiable. My place is here, and I'm exactly where I belong. So when life tries to tell you that you're not enough, that you don't deserve a seat at the table, that you should know your place, remember this: you get to define your place. You get to decide what success means. You get to choose whether cruelty makes you cruel or whether it makes you kind. Choose kindness. Choose compassion. Choose to build something that matters. That's the real triumph. That's the real victory. That's the life worth living. And that's the lesson my father tried to teach me, the lesson I'm teaching Ethan, and the lesson I hope everyone who walks through the doors of Bennett's table takes with them into the world. We don't feed extras here, because there are no extras. Every person matters. Every child deserves dignity. Every family deserves a chance. That's the place I know, and it's where I'll stay. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever been in a situation where family members treated you unfairly or tried to make you feel less than? How did you handle it? What helped you move forward? Share your story in the comments below. Your experience might help someone else who's going through something similar. If this story touched you or made you think differently about success, family, and what really matters in life, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Share this with someone who needs to hear that their worth isn't determined by other people's opinions. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it reminded you that even in your darkest moments, you have the power to choose who you become. Choose compassion over cruelty. Choose building over destroying. Choose love over bitterness. Take care of yourselves and each other. Until next time.